Okay, good afternoon once again. It's 3 o'clock and we're going to start. My name is Isaac. I'm an offensive security engineer at Cyber Bureau, and this is a webinar series, a proactive webinar series from us. This will be done twice in a quarter, twice every quarter. A little brief about Cyber Bureau. We are an MSSP located in both Abuja and Lagos. We probably basically provide managed security services to organizations both small and large scale. We also into trainings via our Cyberdemia platform, where we offer technical trainings, all levels of training actually, it goes across all levels for organizations, again, both small and large. We also into research and development, where we build our own indigenous security tools as well. So today we will be looking at a vulnerability that, has been in rampant, and a lot of this malicious actor has actually been leveraging on this to cause harm on different organizations, and that is the Log4j. So we have an expert in the house, our Isiaku, who is a subject matter on security operations here at Cyber Bureau. He is going to do justice to demystifying how you detect this vulnerability, what the vulnerability is about, and how well you can keep yourself, secured and safe, from these bad guys on as regards exploiting this vulnerability. Awal, if you are ready, we'll just take it up from here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good day, everyone. Hope you can hear me loud and clear.
Yes, we can hear you.
Hello.
Clear.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to share my screen now. Can you enable screen sharing? Let's see. Okay. Thank you. All right. So can you see my screen?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Okay. So we're going. Okay. My name is Awale Shaku, and we're going to be talking about the Log4j vulnerability. So the thing is, before now, there are a lot of write-ups, a lot of blog posts, a lot of articles about this vulnerability. They focus mainly on the impacts, and they talk about some of the basic remediation activities. But
just to quickly, a quick one, please. For participants, yes, please, if you have any question during the course of our presentation, just do well to type this in the chat box. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Thank you. So this vulnerability, like I was saying, they focus on the attack patterns, like the impacts and all of that. But at Cyber Bureau, we want to dive deep into this particular vulnerability to understand how it can be detected from an engineering perspective now, not just to implement a solution and then you go to rest. We're trying to really understand how this detection happens. And we're going to do that in several ways. So briefly, let's talk about the Log4j vulnerability. So it has, I think, about 2 or 3 CVEs, but this was the earlier CVE that was discovered. And this particular vulnerability leads to a remote code execution attack. It affects Apache library of Log4j version 2.0 to version 2.15. Now, to simplify this, I don't think I've seen posts or articles out there that really try to simplify what this vulnerability is all about. So this vulnerability affects a particular Java library that is used to log messages, mostly used to log error messages. And it is used by several applications that are in production, including some applications from Apple, I believe Twitter as well, and the popular Elastic Stack. I don't know if you're aware of that, the ELK, which is a combination of Elasticsearch, Logstash, and Kibana. Even a gaming platform, Minecraft, was impacted by this vulnerability. So it's a small Java library that runs as a component of and it is used to log error messages. That is all about the Log4j tool library. So moving on, we'll talk about some of the defense measures out there. One of the defense measures the user can take is to run periodic scan systems or within your environment. So this is relatively easy. We'll have various security solutions out there that do these various vulnerability scanners and all of that. But we'll try to dive into this in a moment to see how this detection works. Then we can proceed to patch all vulnerable versions that have been identified in our environment. And after that, we also create or delete rules that create detection rules rather. We create detection rules that monitor connection and web access logs to detect exploitation attempts. We're also going to look at this. So these are the two items that we're going to dive into to see how this actually works. Now, we'll start with running scans to detect vulnerable versions. And we'll utilize an open source tool known as Wazoo. It's a SIM tool. Originally, it started as an EDR, an endpoint detection and response solution, but it also has capabilities of a SIM. So we're going to utilize it. We'll go into that shortly. Now, our first task today is to scan our system to identify the vulnerable versions of the Log4j tool library. So first of all, we're going to dive into Java libraries, which usually end with the .jar extension to identify these vulnerable versions. Now, we're going to do some hands-on activities now. Before now, I've downloaded a couple of the vulnerable libraries. One of the approach that a user can take to identify a vulnerability or these security vendors, one of the approaches that they take is to compare the file hashes with a vulnerability database that contains vulnerable file hashes, right? So for instance, I'm very sure that some of these files here, their hashes are already in the vulnerability database. But the problem with sticking with just that approach is the fact that some developers, they modify these libraries themselves. So as soon as something changes in the file, the hash is no longer the same, and it won't be matched with the vulnerability database. So that leaves us with a big problem, which can be easily solved when you understand the Java file structure, which is the JR file structure. So in summary, Java files are basically compressed archives, and by archives, I'm talking about something like your zip file and your .tar files are usually zipped and compressed. So in order to go into this file to actually see the contents, we'll unzip it. So I have a zip manager here, 7-zip file manager. As you can see, these are some of the contents of this Java file. So let's just extract everything. So we've already extracted it here. And one way we can detect this vulnerability now is by going into this meta inf folder. In this folder, we'll see the manifest file. The manifest file usually contains some basic information about the library, and some part of those information is the library version. This usually doesn't change unless someone deliberately removes it from the manifest file. But as long as we are working with official code or official libraries, the version information is always there. So let's go into this manifest file now. And to make the job easier, we are going to just find implementation version. Like the version is always followed with this. So when we look at this manifest file, we'll see the implementation version is version 2.13.2. So we're sure that this is an older version, which means it's vulnerable to this Log4j. Now, we might ask, why go through all this stress when we can just look at the file name when we can just see the name and we know the version. There are some instances where the name doesn't indicate the version, so we definitely want to go into it to identify the version. Now, this is one way to identify vulnerable libraries on the system. But then there is another challenge, which is, let's say you have 100 Java files on your system. Does it mean you are going to manually locate all those files and begin to unzip them one after the other? This is a very huge challenge. As a matter of fact, I have several Java files in just this one folder. So how am I going to do this? Let's say we're running a Linux system now. You can utilize the find command. I don't know, you might be familiar with the find command or not, but basically the find command is used to search for certain files within the system. So I'm going to open a note that I've kept now. Let's just focus on this find command for now. We'll look at the rest later on. So I'm going to copy this out for further analysis. Let's look at it together. So the find command usually runs on Linux-based systems. There's also the command for Windows somewhere out there. So let's take a deep dive at this find command. So in this case now, I'm specifying that the find command should search this folder. I can specify it for it to search every folder on my system by just putting the slash. It means it will start from the root directory and recursively search all the folders within the system to identify all Java files. So what I'm doing in this case now, just to save us time, I'm running the find command to identify all Log4j files on the system. And when it identifies all of them, it's going to unzip them and then open the manifest file. And in that manifest file, it will only print out the implementation version for us. So this is like a simple breakdown of this find command. So no matter the number of Java files we have on this system, this is much, much faster than when you are manually unzipping the files yourself. So let's run this command. So as you can see, we have multiple outputs because we have several of these Java files here. So it has printed the implementation version of each and every one of them for us. And from here, we can also deduce whether we have a vulnerable version or not. But let's even go further than this. Now we talked about finding it in one file. We talked about finding it in one system. But in an ideal environment, you usually have hundreds of computers on the network. You have tens of servers, maybe thousands of endpoints in your network environment. So are you going to be running this command one after the other on every single endpoint? That is where Wazoo comes in. So in Wazoo, we will utilize the Sca policies for more efficient search of the vulnerable libraries. So Sca stands for Security Configuration Assessment. And it basically, like, the sole purpose of the Sca is to ensure that computers on your network, they conform to certain security baselines. So to do this, I'm going to power on my Wazoo server now. So we're going into the SIM solution now. I have my Wazoo server here, and I also have a web server, which is, so just take notes, the Wazoo server is usually the default Ubuntu theme, the brown terminal, and the web server is the dark theme. So on the Wazoo server now, let's dive into the Wazoo dashboard. We'll have a quick walk around on this. One thing I've done here, on this web server is that I've installed an Apache Web Server. Let's clear this so that we'll have a fresh terminal. So I've installed an Apache Web Server. And as you can see, it's currently running. And I also have a vulnerable, several vulnerable Log4j versions here. So it's the 2.13 version that I have on this system. And at the same time, I have Java running. So it's not running, but it is currently installed on this endpoint, on this web server. Now back to Wazoo dashboard. Now this is taking too long. So what the Wazoo, like I mentioned earlier, it's an open source security solution. It's used by a lot of high-end enterprise. It's mainly used by people that have the human resources and the knowledge, the know-how of managing these things. If you can efficiently use this, I believe it's like one of the best that you can use out there. So on this dashboard now, I have this my Ubuntu client connected to the Wazoo server. So the Wazoo server is currently monitoring this my endpoint, which is this web server here. Now, let's explore this dashboard a little bit. So here we can see, like, have a quick view of some of the security events that are being populated on the dashboard. And currently we have no alerts, and there's nothing so serious, or like there's nothing interesting at the moment. But for now, I want to focus on the SCA, Security Configuration Assessment. And similarly, there's nothing interesting here at the moment, at least for the last 15 minutes. If I go a little bit deeper, I think we should have some results from the previous 24 hours. So what we're going to do now is we're going to create SCA policies that will scan all the endpoints that are connected to this server. So I prefer to do it from the terminal. It feels a lot much more flexible for me. So I've created this SCA policy beforehand just to save our time. So basically, this policy is only going to run. Let me increase this. So there is a requirement for this policy to run. It will only run when Java is installed on the endpoint. So for instance, you have a computer on your network and then there's no Java in the first place. So what is the point of even running the scan when there's no possibility of the vulnerable version running? So it will only run when Java is installed on the endpoint. So that is one of the requirements for this policy to run on any endpoint. And then when Java is installed, it will now perform these checks. This is, I think, the most important check here. Exactly the same command from earlier. Let's wrap it so that we'll see it better. So it's exactly the same command we had earlier to find all Java files and then unzip and open the manifest file and print out only the implementation version. So Wazoo is going to send this command to the agents and it will try to match it with this simple regular expression to confirm whether it is version 2.16. Because version 2.16 is the latest, and every other version below 2.16 to 2. I believe 2.12 or something like that, they are vulnerable. So we want to raise an alert when the version is not 2.16. Although another approach to do this is to list out the vulnerable versions directly, but we're just hammering it out like this, and then some other necessary commands that are here that we need to run just to check the version of Java running and to check if GNDI is running. This is one of the features we need to disable when a vulnerable version is on the system. So it's also important to check if that feature is enabled on the endpoint. So what we're going to do now is we're going to copy this policy to the Wazoo server. And mind you, this is a YAML policy. that is YAML. It's like a language that is used for configuration and several other related activities. It's one of the new languages now. I believe like this should displace XML, maybe not too long from now. So let's create a policy now. We're going to create it in a particular folder. These are just going to be some Wazoo related folders. So it's not something that I want to really pay too much attention to. The main thing is just to see, it's just to get an idea of what really happens behind the scenes. So we're going to create a file here, log4j underscore check.yml. Let's see, I didn't copy it. Let me copy this again. All right, so this policy now that we have pasted it here, let's save this file. Yeah, we have saved the file. And this policy is going to be shared with the agent automatically. We can try to confirm that by opening the file on the agent. So the file has been shared with the agent. Next thing we want to do is to enable this policy, the Sca policy now, by modifying the agent configuration file. Like I mentioned earlier, this is not something to have a headache about unless you are bent on using Wazoo. Else you can just pay attention to the key things that we're doing here. So basically, we're just saying this can should run for 24 hours, and this is the policy we want it to execute every 24 hours. But one good thing is, as soon as we make these changes, the policy is going to run. Like any new change that has been made to the configuration file will restart the agent, so the policy is going to run. But to avoid wasting of time, we're going to restart the agent, the manager, Wazoo manager ourselves. All right, so as soon as this manager restarts, the policy is going to run, and we should get some events relating to this policy on our dashboard. So let's see, in the last 15 minutes, nothing. And right now we're hoping that the policy is going to execute in a short while. And we can also check the endpoint, which is the agent computer, to confirm that this agent configuration has been shared with it. As you can see, same thing has been shared with the endpoint. And this will also apply to every other computer that is connected to the Wazoo manager. So I believe we have given this enough time to run. All right. So the events have been generated. Let me zoom in a little bit. Now, from the output we have here, we can see that it passed this check. Java is not currently running on the system, obviously, because the command that is meant to check for Java is this simple command, just ps-aus grep Java. So, and Java is not currently running on the system. So that was passed. Now, the next one on the Log4j vulnerability itself was failed because Log4j, a vulnerable version, was detected on the endpoint. So if we drill down into this, we can read more about it based on what we have written in our configuration file, our policy in the Sca policies. All these IDs, the title, the description, remediation, and all of that, they are all appearing here on the dashboard for the analyst to easily know what to do and users can also act on this when they see such alerts. So now we have talked about the detection of vulnerable versions. And like I mentioned earlier, there are several open source solutions that can be utilized for this. There are several vulnerability scanners that can be used. But let's say you are operating in an environment where you want to keep everything in a centralized platform. I believe this is like a good alternative or a good platform to do that, because you have the possibility of running your Sca policies. You can easily create your custom Sca policies, and at the same time, you can integrate some vulnerability scanners with this. So it's a great fit for the job. Now, we're done with scanning for vulnerable versions. Next thing on our list should be patching the vulnerability, but the security, the IT guys will patch it. Let them go and do it. Then let's talk about creating the detection rules that monitor connection and web access logs to detect exploitation attempts. So it is well known that this Log4j mainly affects web applications and web servers, although some other applications also utilize Log4j. So basically what users need to do is forward the logs to whatever security solution that they use. That is one key point of security operations: visibility. Like, you need to get logs from as many devices as possible. So in this case, it happens to be the web server which we want to monitor now. And we've already configured the web server to forward its log to the Wazoo server. Let's look at that in the configuration file. I don't know if you noticed earlier, but it is there. Here in this line, we can see that we are forwarding the Apache. This is the Apache log file by default on Ubuntu. So it is already forwarding the logs to Wazoo. Now, moving on, we'll look at, in order to detect this exploit now, because we're trying to implement a multi-level approach, multi-layer approach in our operations. So we know for sure that, okay, we have tried our best and we have detected all vulnerable servers in our environment, and we have updated them, or we have disabled the servers, like the libraries or whatever it is we have done. But at the same time, you can't be too sure. So there is a need to always constantly monitor to detect when there is an exploitation attempt going on. So over the past few weeks that the vulnerability has been popularly known, has been out, we have seen several attack patterns. The first, which was this, very easy to detect. All you need to do is create the rule that will match this. Wherever you see $, this JNDI, you raise an alarm. But it started to get crazy when the security guys, they created rules to easily detect this. Oh, it's like a cat and mouse game. These guys went further to obfuscate this part. So web encoding for the $ is %24, and web encoding for this curly braces is %7B. So if you previously had a rule to detect this, it's not going to detect this attack string anymore. So there is a need to update your rules to detect this. And this is also fairly easy to detect. They proceeded further to use B64 encoding, which we'll look at one of it in a moment. And it was relatively easy to detect the B64 encoded format as well. Like, they are trying to obfuscate as much as they can. Then they came up with some very crazy patterns. Now, how can a user or an analyst begin to match all these patterns that keep springing up, like they keep coming up? This is huge work. So you try to match this pattern, the next day another pattern pops up, the next day another pattern pops up, and it keeps going on and on. But one thing we have seen in common is that the JNDI is always written in the attack strings. So like in this case, like look at the amount of characters in between each letter. But at the end of the day, you still have the $sign, the curly braces, and you have J, you have N, you have D, and you have I. So this is something we definitely want to match at all costs. And in order to do this, we came up with a regular expression. Now, on Wazoo uses regular expressions to detect this type of attacks. You can create your own regular expressions. So let's take a look at these regular expressions. I'm going to copy this out for our analysis. So let me place this here. Let's give it a nice color. So now, let's just deep dive into this regular expression. I, meaning want it to be case insensitive. So no matter how they try to write this, rewrite this, whether it's capital J, lowercase n, whatever it is, we're going to match it. Then the next thing we did in the regular expression was to create this $sign or 24. So you might be wondering, why is it not %24? Well, it's because they found another obfuscation technique here where there is no percentage before the 24. So we don't know how it works, but some web servers have a way of interpreting these messages. And the crazy thing is, this is what gets stored in the log. But at the end of the day, the web server is still going to execute this. So it does not matter how they come. All that matters is to identify the patterns and flag them as malicious. So let's continue with this. So we have the $sign or 24. So these are basically the same thing, just that this is the encoded version of this. And then after the $sign, any string can follow. So this literally means any string can follow. For example, now, in this case where they have the $sign and then they have all of this. All of this is going to be matched with any string before we match this next one. So moving forward, we have the curly braces or 7B. So it's exactly the same thing. This is the encoded version of the curly braces. And after that, any string can follow, because we're just trying to identify the consistent pattern we always see in all of them, which is this, like these strings must always appear in this order. So if you notice, when you go through the entire regular expression that we have created, we have the J, any string can follow, the N, any string follows, the T, anything follow, and the I. So this is like, this is more like, how will I put it, a universal regular expression that will always flag the exploit patterns that we have seen, whether in the dark web, on several blog posts, on several forums. These are the patterns we have seen. And when you try to match all these patterns and it doesn't work, then try to match this. This is B64 encoded for this. So let's go and decode this and see. So what happens is that they try to encode this, and then when the request gets to the web server decodes it, and then you get this output. Meanwhile, if you don't have a rule to decode, to detect this pattern as well, it's going to bypass your security detection measures. So we also added this pattern to the regular expression. So let's decode it. There are several B64 decoders online. So let's use one of them. So this is the string. By the time we decode, we're getting this JNDI. So I've tried as much as possible to match all patterns that we have seen. Now, how does this fit into our SIM solution, the security solution that we're using in our environment? Let's look at the rule now. this is a bit tedious. That is why guys in tech, they always have gray hair, like, and they get old easily. Now looking at this, this is the rule we created to detect this on Wazoo now. Basically, what you are saying here, what you should pay attention to here is that we have this regular expression here that we want to match every single log that gets to our Wazoo manager. We want to test it to see if there is a match here. And as for the rest of the information here, they are basically just some descriptions about the attack that was detected. And then we have some MITRE techniques for initial access, lateral movement, and I think defense evasion. So this helps the analyst to understand what is going on, and you can always categorize the attacks. So before we apply this rule to our Wazoo manager, let's even try to run the exploitation attempt, right? So let's be sure of what we're doing. Let's be sure that we're not able to detect this attack. So normally I have my web server here. So there is no fancy application here, by the way. So what we're going to do, we're going to run the exploit string to see if our security solution is able to detect this. Now, let's check our dashboard. Before we even go to our dashboard, let's check the log file for this. Let's see. So I'm currently on my web server now. So access log. So you can see it has been logged in our web server. But is there any alert on this? Let's go to back to our Wazoo dashboard. Let's see if we have any alerts. I doubt we'll have any alerts because the rule has not been created. So security events. And at the moment, there is 0 alerts. So in order to detect this vulnerability, we're going to add this rule now to our Wazoo manager. So it's in the rule folder, and then local rules.xml. So I'm just going to copy this out. And by the way, if you have any questions, don't forget to drop them in the chat on whatever it is that Zoom has for questions. So I've added this rule to my Wazoo manager. Now I'm going to save the rule and I'll restart the manager. And as soon as the manager restarts, the rule is going to take effect. And when there is any new request that contains those attack strings, we're going to see them. We're going to get the alerts. All right, so Wazoo manager has restarted, and back to our dashboard. There's nothing interesting at the moment. So what we're going to do now, we're going to try to trigger the alert with this same attack pattern, attack string rather. So I think we should have an alert in a few seconds. Yeah. So I've managed to raise an alert, and we tested this against the several patterns that have been discovered, like all these crazy patterns you have seen here. It will still raise an alert no matter which of them you replace in this request parameter. So it's an interesting one. Let me back. Yeah. So let's look at the alerts. Okay, we're in the alert page. As you can see, it mapped to the MITRE techniques, initial access, lateral movement, defense evasion, and Log4j RC attack attempt detected. And I think that is it. We've come to the end of this live setup and trying to detect this attack and detecting vulnerable versions. I would like you to hold your questions at the end of the session. You can also drop them in the chats from now as well. Hamza will come on and then we'll talk about some of the attack trends that we're going to be seeing moving forward. Thank you. Hamza,
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm here. Thank you so much, Al, for that insightful presentation. It was quite deep, I must say. Seeing all of these terminal comments and all that. Yeah, it's nice. It's nice. Please, if you have questions, let's just do well to drop them in the chat box. Yeah, a lot of thanks coming to you, Awal. Yeah, so please, if you have questions, do well to drop your questions in the chat box. We'll take them at the end of the session. Moving forward, we have Hamza Latif, who is the lead technical security engineer at Cyber Plural. So he will be taking us through, the trends of things we should be looking out for as regard cybersecurity in 2022. Hamza, you have the floor.
All right.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Awa, for that wonderful presentation. Good afternoon, good day, good morning from anywhere you are listening to us from. My name is Hamza. So we're going to continue from where our stop. This is another year. This is 2022. And we are all coming from a time where we've seen a whole lot of disruption, a whole lot of change in the way businesses operate due to the COVID pandemic. So we are going to talk a little more about what we should be looking out for, like moving into the year, and how organizations can put themselves together to stay ahead of the attack. So we're going to talk about that briefly. And as we do that, as we go around that soft slide, I know what Awal did with us at the beginning is more a bit technical. So while we are trying to revolve around these trends, we should try to drop our questions so that you can kind of start picking them up and we'll give you answers at the end. So I'm going to share my screen. Just give me a moment. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. So we're going to be talking about 2022 cybersecurity outlook and prediction. And if we look at what is happening today, we are coming from a period of the pandemic, 2020, 2021. A lot of businesses are still trying to get their feet into how they will be able to operate and, how they will be able to start leveraging technology.
Okay, sorry, Hamza. I think you're not audible enough. Could you adjust your audio? Thank you.
Can you hear me now? Is it better? It's better, right? Okay. So I think, yes. So what I'm trying to say is more of, we need to kind of set the background. So we are coming from a year whereby a lot of businesses got disrupted and people started working from home. The usual security perimeter we used to have in organization is no longer what we are having today. We are now having distributed work environments. Some people are working from home, some people are working from different environments. So you as a security professional, you're working to protect your organization and to support the business objective. There's a whole lot of work you have been doing coming down from 2020 up to 2021, and now we are going into another year. So we need to talk about what we should be looking out for and what we should start paying attention moving forward. So basically, I'm going to be talking about the drop in ransomware. This is one of the things that we see that going down into the year, there's going to be a drop in the ransomware attack. Last year, we've seen kind of very huge numbers of attacks. It's even at a point on to competition between different threat actors that we're talking about, a lot of attacks on critical national infrastructure. We mentioned the like of the Kaseya, we mentioned the like of Colonial Pipeline attack. There's a lot of attack. So, but coming into 2022, we started seeing that disruption. FBI, a whole lot of security and law enforcement agency have been following up with this threat group, and they've been getting them arrested. So this, I know it's going to send in some messages to other attackers that are trying to maybe use their tactics and techniques to get into organizations. So there is tendency we see a drop in ransomware attack as we move forward because of some of the changes we are getting to see. Like government is now more interested, law enforcement are doing a whole lot of work to get down on these threat actors that perpetrated most of the bigger attacks that we see around this space last year. Another thing we noticed from last year was this supply chain attack with the SolarWind. Virtually a whole lot of agencies, MDAs in the United States got affected because they are using a particular product, and now the bad guys they took advantage of the product. They've used that to spread the kind of supply chain attack. So we are looking at going into the year. Our prediction is that there's tendency we see some other countries trying to kind of, maybe they want to revenge, or maybe some threat actors trying to lend the rope. Because one thing is when you do something and it works, we see some kind of copycat of that attempt moving forward. So we are observing, we are looking at the possibility that there could be an high rise in this supply chain attack. Organizations should watch out. They should check around their third-party relationship. They need to understand what they are exchanging so that they'll be able to protect their environment. So another thing that we've put on our list, which is standing as part of the line of prediction, is the hacker for hire industry. This is very, very we started noticing this in 2021. Like there are a lot of private organizations, private sector offensive actors that are being hired by government, they are being hired by government to kind of do some things, either in exchange for exploit or in exchange for tools. These are a couple of things we noticed last year, and we pretty much understood the fact that, you know, if I'm a government too and I see one other government doing something, maybe I will be able to put up my capability. I'll be able to get people that will do something in that regard for me. So this is another thing we should watch out for moving into the year. Hacker for hire industry, something that is becoming very is a trend that we are seeing today. Another thing is the growing zero-day factory. The very vulnerability that Awal explained to us, like not quite long. It came towards the Christmas period, and everybody was even laughing at professionals that, oh, you guys want to go on break now, we have problems for you. Let's see how you guys will go around it. So this is a battle of who has what can affect the world globally in terms of security. This is like who has that vulnerability. So 0 day is something you don't know about, but maybe some people somewhere knew about that and they have started working on that. So every country in the world today, they are building offensive cyber capability. And according to the report we have on the Log4j, some people were pointing the direction to be that, okay, this is something that is coming from China. Some group discovered the vulnerability in China and all of that. So we should be looking out for other countries are rolling out some kind of funny 0 days as we move into the year as well. So another thing is for many organizations today, due to COVID, for many businesses, due to the fact that people want to be able to access things without leaving their homes, there are a whole lot of smart devices that are coming to play. We have IoTs, we are installing more of these devices. And the bigger problem here is that they are not just on their own separate network. They are having access, most of these smart devices, IoTs, are having access to our business network. They're having access to our home network. And if we look at that, the possibility of us having more risk available on our network is very, very high. So the proliferation of some of these devices, the security of some of these devices are not that strong. So we expect that attackers will want to leverage some of these things. They know you are connecting them to your app homes, you are connecting them to your businesses, and definitely they can leverage that as well. So if we look at this, we will not but also mention financial malware. Yes, countries like North Korea, countries like Iran, they've been packed to start. They've mentioned some of these countries to have threat actors that are leveraging malwares to steal money from banks and financial industry. So we should watch out for these people, and they are not stopping. Some other countries are also trying to leverage on them. So we see government-backed hackers that are linked to some of these regime, and that is why we need to start paying attention to these people in this area. So another thing we need to note here is the fact that there is machine learning and AI tools in cybersecurity. The same way the good guys, those of us in defense, the same way we want to leverage AI is the same way the bad guys also want to leverage AI and all these machine learning tools. So it's a two-way sword. We have to be very careful. We have to see how we can push all of this down and see how to leverage it to give us an edge in the game. If we have the money, we can invest on some of these things. So basically, I'm just going to quickly brief this. We've listed out what we should be looking out for. So, but we need to as well notice what we can do to slow down whatever impact this kind of attacks or incidents can have on our environment. So probably we have to look at strengthening our security fundamentals, which is very key for organization. You need to know the fundamentals like asset management, password management, your cyber hygiene, user awareness training, and all of that. These are the fundamentals. You need to work on this. You need to make cybersecurity, if you are on this call and you have not, maybe cybersecurity is still a personal thing in your environment, this is something that needs to be a boardroom agenda moving forward in 2022. We need to leverage intelligent automation and other advanced tools as well. We need to as well shift to what we call the zero trust architecture, where you have to understand that everybody needs to validate their existence, either as a data application, network, you have to just validate yourself every now and then. We also need to start focusing on securing our cloud infrastructure. Many businesses today have moved to the cloud due to the COVID pandemic. And yes, you want to continue to do business, but if you are doing that at the detriment of your client or your customers or your business reputation, it becomes a problem. So you need to pay attention to securing your cloud environment. Then you develop a continuity plan, like very important. You need to have a plan. What if there's an incident? What will you do and how will you go about it? So this is basically what we have put together as what you can do as businesses to start pushing forward in 2022. Thank you very much. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you so much, Hamza. That was quite an insightful one. We have a couple of questions here. We want to make sure we are keeping to time. So, there are questions for you. First, I must say you're getting a lot of commendations. I can't start reading all of them out, but a lot of people are quite impressed with your presentations. Okay, quick one, Awal. Can you share more insights on the Wazoo server and what's the alternatives to this Wazoo? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Wazoo server. First, I'll start with, let's say, alternatives. I don't know of many open source alternatives out there. I think the key point or one important factor for me in this case now is that the fact that it is open source, and I believe it has some of the features that others do not have. It has the active response capability, and it's very customizable. Another option is the Elastic EDR. The problem with the Elastic EDR now, anyways, because of the community, like the open source community, some components of Elastic are no longer open source, so a lot of people have problems with that. I think Komodo is also an option, but I'm not sure. I've not used it before, so I don't know much about it. We also have the Komodo EDR. It's free, and they also have the, I believe, licensed version or cloud version that is paid for. And deep dive into Wazoo itself. So basically, Wazoo is a fork of OSSEC. You might be familiar with OSSEC. Like OSSEC is used by several security vendors, including Alien Vault. They use OSSEC for their EDRs. I don't know if it's still a component of, not their EDR, their endpoint agents. I don't know if it's still a component of Alien Vault, but it was at least as at 2019. I remember that is the latest I followed up with Alien World. So Wazoo started as a fork of OSX, but over the years, like, it has become a completely different product on its own. And apart from the EDR capabilities, what makes it stand out from the other EDR is the fact that it can also work as a SIEM, integrating with Suricata. It integrates with most of the security solutions that are out there. It integrates well with Fortinet, FortiGate solutions. Like, most firewalls out there integrate well with Wazoo, and it's like a powerhouse. That's what I would say. And that's why I choose it for this demo. And maybe I'm also biased to it. Yeah.
All right, thank you very much all for that one. I think that answers the question correctly. Okay, the other one now is okay. It's to you, Hamza. It's more like we're going to have a conversation on this one, but I'd like it to be quick. It's from one of the participants. This is just him thinking out loud, I guess, because he said there may be drop in ransomware, but I believe that the bad guys are not sleeping soon. More ransomware gangs keep evolving every day. It has been noticed that some of them split into smaller groups attacking different industries, which is very true. And this may, attacking different industry of which they are still together. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you on that. Now, drop in ransomware is achievable. This is still him, thinking it's achievable because the government is now much interested. Yet believe there will be a breakout of a whole gang just to frustrate the defensive measures. So Hamza, I'd like to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, definitely. This is going to be, I hope you can hear me. Yeah. Definitely, this is going to be, it is a war. Yes, we are in a war, and whether we like it or not, if the enemy is trying to change tactics, definitely the person that is fighting that enemy also has to change his tactics. So what we are seeing right now is the fact that the law enforcement agency, the government, they are more interested in those key players in that particular industry. Yes, for every of these cyber crimes, we see some threat actors take interest in some tracks. And last year, we've seen that high increase and high impact attack on the power of ransomware. So now they are trying to the government is trying to hit on the key players in that space. Just to create, one of the things they are trying to do is they want to put up a statement of deterrence, so that, okay, even though if you are thinking it, you are thinking to go to that space, it will be that fear of, oh, even though if I have to collect my ransom using cryptocurrency or anything, the government can still get to me. So they want to eat down, they are currently eating down on the big guys in that space, and hope that will help other upcoming groups to start looking for another tactics or techniques they want to follow. So we are hoping that as they are trying to develop new tactics or new approach to getting their things done, we at this other end will also look for how to get on them. And I'm hoping that the government too, yes, at the beginning, it's some people are even saying it's political, Russia, blah, blah, blah. The whole arrangement to the arrest of some of this gang, it's a little bit more political. So some people in the industry are like, no, this thing is just political. They just want to settle some short cases. So I believe we are going to get more of these positive feedbacks from the government and from the practitioner moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hamza, for adding to that thought. I guess there are no questions there. Now, the recordings will be made available to all participants, and as well, it's also going to be on our YouTube channel, Cyber Plural Limited. You can just search for us on YouTube. We are also on LinkedIn, Cyber Plural Limited, on Twitter as well, at Cyber Plural, but everywhere. So please do well to keep it having us. We also do regular blog posts where we discuss some of the technical issues like this. Yeah, this webinar is not a one-off thing, like I mentioned in the beginning of the series. in the beginning of the session, rather, it's going to be something that we'll do twice in a quarter. So I urge every one of you who has joined today to stay tuned and also tell others, because there's a lot more that will be dishing out from this end. Yes, thank you so much again for taking time to be a part of this webinar. So this is our first for the year, and again, to continue. I wish all of you a very beautiful evening. And thank you, Hamza. Thank you, Awal, for your time. And again, thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Yeah.